Well, hello, C3 family. What a great privilege it is to join you. I know a number of your leaders. I've had the pleasure of working with them. I'll be seeing them again soon, just in a few months. And they've just asked me to share a little bit about my journey, particularly as it relates to a series you're in on 1 John 4. I love this passage. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Because fear has to do with punishment, and the one who fears is not made perfect in love. And then, of course, that next passage, we love because he first loved us. My name is Steve Cuss. I was born and raised in Western Australia. I did not grow up in the church at all, and I became a Christian as a teenager. I would just say about my childhood and teenage years that home was not a safe place, school was not a safe place. And my very first experience really with unconditional love and acceptance was in a local church when my older sister invited me to a youth group. I was 13 years of age, and I couldn't say it this way at that time, of course, but as I look back on that, the way I would describe my experience walking into a church is my soul relaxed. I didn't have to go into self-protection anymore. I didn't have to put up a pretense anymore, even though if you'd seen me at 13, becoming a teenage kid in the church, I had so much self-protection and so much pretentious living. But what my kind of nervous system communicated to me is you can be yourself in this place. You can be seen and loved and accepted. And through that, I discovered and was taught the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that not only is there a God, which I had always believed, I'd always believed there was some kind of a God. That made most sense to me. Not only is there a God, but the center of the heartbeat of the universe is love, that God is best understood in the person and work of Jesus Christ, that Jesus' death and burial and resurrection is the linchpin for all life. The two problems of humans, sin and death, both solved and conquered by Jesus on the cross and in the empty tomb. That changed my life. I'm now in my 50s. I'm not going to betray my age. I'm 50-something. We call it middle age, but I'm on the back end for sure of my life. Middle age, nothing. But I've been a follower of Christ for a few decades now, and that arresting love of God still captures my heart. It's still what I orient my whole life around. And you may not be familiar with me. I'm a pastor, but now I'm a pastor at large. I travel and speak, and I help people lower anxiety in all of their core relationships. It began for me when I was a trauma and hospice chaplain. I just graduated from Bible college. This is way back in the 1990s. And I served my first full-time job out of Bible college was as a local hospital chaplain. It was in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I had moved from Perth to Knoxville, Tennessee, the South in the United States, where there's more Baptists than people. And after I got my college degree there, I worked at the local teaching hospital. And you've probably watched some of those American medical dramas. I'm sure it's the same in England, where you know that medical students do these medical residencies. They do these marathon long shifts. I was doing a chaplain residency. They don't show those on the hospital dramas, but almost every teaching hospital, at least in the United States, has a chaplain residency program, and that's for ministry students to do like an apprenticeship. And we do those same marathon hours just like the doctors do. And so my first day on the job was a 28-hour overnight shift. I'd never seen a dead body before. I'd had no experience with grief, and I was 24. I'd been married for 6 days. So the day before, I was on my honeymoon, and then the next day, my brand new wife dropped me off at 8 a.m. with my little overnight bag, and I walked through the double doors of this hospital, 660 beds, helicopter, transplant, level 1 trauma emergency room, all of it. 8 o'clock, my wife prays for me, kisses me on the cheek, drops me off with my overnight bag, and she said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow at noon. I'll pick you up tomorrow at noon. And that started my very first day as a chaplain. Now, as we were orienting around, there were 6 chaplain residents, 6 of us students. I was the youngest by almost 10 years. All of the other chaplain residents had had previous chaplain experience. They were older than me. I was the kid. They kind of enjoyed teasing me for being the kid. And I was the first one to take the on-call shift. So the supervisor puts all these beepers on my belt, these pages on my belt. This is the 1990s before, we had cell phones. Kids, you can ask your parents at home. But before we had these things, we had on our belt beepers or pages. I know a lot of hospitals still use them. I had 4 of them for different areas of the hospital, the ER, the code team when someone's heart stops, all of that. So we're touring the hospital and we're just getting to know, we're meeting staff and patients and doctors and social workers. And I don't know, about 40, 45 minutes into the shift, the blue beeper goes off on my belt. And we all stopped in the hallway. And I look at Randall, the supervisor, just to come clean. His real name in America is Randy, but I find it helpful to culturally adapt to England. So let's call him Randall, just to save some trouble. So Randall stops in the hallway, and I look at him, my supervisor, and it's in front of all the other students. And I said, okay, which one's the blue beeper? And he says, that's the code team. You need to go. And I was thinking to myself, okay, the code team, right. They told me about that in the interview. The code team is when someone's heart stops. I'm supposed to be with a family while we wait and see if this person's going to live or not. Okay, got it, code team. So I asked Randall a follow-up question, what I thought was a perfectly reasonable question. And I said, okay, what do I do? And he looked at me very kindly and he said, well, we're all about to find out, aren't we? That was the first moment I realized, having taken this job, that they don't train you. They just throw you in. It's technically a form of education called action, reflection, action. Most education, you learn about it, then you go do it. Or ideally, you learn about it, you watch someone do it, they watch you do it, then you do it. Yeah, not so much in chaplaincy. Chaplaincy, they throw you in, action, then you debrief it every day, reflection, then they throw you in again, action. So the beeper had gone off and Randall wasn't even coming with me. He was just sending me to go take care of whatever was going to happen. And so I said, well, what if I get it wrong? What if I make a mistake? And Randall looked at me and he says, oh, yeah, Steve, this year you're going to make hundreds of mistakes. And that little pep talk was my entire orientation into chaplaincy. And 3 or 4 minutes later, I'm in a room with 12 screeching people. One lady was headbutting the wall. She was just pounding her head over and over again against a wall. One lady was throwing up into a rubbish bin and then dry heaving and hyperventilating. One guy was just wildly swinging. He was sitting down, but he was just punching the air. And all 12 of them were screeching at the top of their lungs. And I had no idea what to do. And any time I don't know what to do, I feel really stupid. And anytime I feel really stupid, I feel really exposed. Like everybody knows the stupid guy showed up. So I'm just standing there watching the screeching and the absolute chaos and mayhem and not knowing what to do. And I started to feel the anxiety behind me. In front of me, there's 12 screeching people. They were in this little room. The doctors had obviously come in and given them bad news. It's funny, I didn't even know what had happened, but I can tell obviously somebody has died. Well, behind me, there's 40 or 50 people, and they're waiting for their loved ones behind the intensive care double doors. And the 40 or 50 people behind me are catching the anxiety of the screechers in front of me, and I'm catching their anxiety. Because one of the things that's true about me is, if you put me in any space, I will feel over-responsible for your experience. I'm what's known as an over-functioner. Maybe you're one of these people as well. An over-functioner is somebody who takes more responsibility than God has asked them to take in any situation. And so I'm feeling responsible for all these people behind me. What do I do about them? Sometime during this, the nurse comes barreling out of the intensive care double doors, and she beckons me out of this little room for a meeting like I'm in trouble, like she's my mum and I'm in trouble. And I read the situation right. She told me off. She smacked her hands and she was really mad. She's like, come on, chaplain, we're behind schedule. Let's go. Let's get the family in to visit their dead mum. I've got patients waiting for that bed. I need to change the sheets. Let's get on it. And she turned on her heels and she walked away. She didn't pause and ask my name. There was no chance for me to say it was my first day on the job. And another thing that's true about me is I'm a people pleaser. I've always been wired that way. If you are not okay with me, then I'm not okay. Maybe you are like that. Maybe you're not one of those people. Maybe as you listen to that, you're like, yeah, I'm not a people pleaser. I know your type. You only love people because Jesus commanded you to love them, right? But not me. My well-being is too linked to both your well-being and my well-being is too linked to your opinion of me. It's not good. And so when she left, my brain went with her. Does that make sense to you? Like my brain was now in her brain. I was thinking about what she was thinking about. Okay, so here I am, first day on the job, and I'm feeling stupid, and I'm feeling over-responsible, and I've let down a stranger. I'm now what's clinically known as flooded. Now, when you are clinically flooded, you're no longer in reality. You're in your own reality. You've probably experienced this. The first thing to go away is awareness of God. I want to be careful here. God doesn't go anywhere. It's awareness of God that suddenly is hard. It's very elusive. You might be thinking of Jacob in the Old Testament, where he says in Genesis chapter 28, Jacob says, surely the Lord was in this place, and I was not aware of it. Jacob was all caught up in himself. If you go back and read the context of that story, you see why he was so caught up in himself. Actually, all through the Bible, people are right in God's presence and they don't recognize it. It's kind of a fun way to read scripture. My other fun one, if you want to do a little homework, Luke chapter 24, Cleopas and his companion, Jesus is walking right alongside Cleopas and Cleopas doesn't recognize him. And how many times in our life do we get so caught up in ourselves? We get flooded, right? We get triggered and we forget the Lord. I wonder if that's why one of the most frequent commands in the Bible is remember the Lord, because God knows what it's like to be human. We forget. So I was flooded, and that means when I'm flooded, I'm disconnected. I'm disconnected from myself. I'm disconnected from awareness of God. I'm also disconnected from reality. When you are flooded, it's very difficult to see what's really going on. You're just operating out of assumption and reactivity. And that explains why I walked into that room and I hustled this poor grieving family in shock in to visit their dead mum, 2 or 3 hours before they were ready. It was awful. It went so badly. Now, if we were to take that first encounter I had in the hospital and we were to fast forward 1 month, that's about how long it took me to be fully experienced. Let's just replay it really quickly 1 month later. Okay, the beeper goes off. I need to get to the ICU. I get there. The people are screeching and in shock. I don't know what to do. That feeling never went away. That feeling of not knowing what to do never really went away. No wonder they don't train you in chaplaincy. You just have to kind of keep putting yourself in and get accustomed to this disorientation and navigate it. But I would have known about myself. I would have noticed this feeling of stupidity. I would have known about myself that that's one of my triggers. I would have named it to God and died to it so I'm free of it. When I felt the anxiety coming from behind me, rather than catching it, I would have put it back on those people. I would have turned around and I would have had a very brief impromptu meeting with the others in the waiting lounge. I would have said, excuse me, everybody, I bet this screeching is very uncomfortable for you. I just want you to know it's probably going to last 2 or 3 hours. I'm not going to stop it. We have to let it play out. If you need to get out of here, get a shower or a meal, we'll find you if we need you. Now, those people can be responsible for themselves, and I can pay attention to this poor family in chaos. When the nurse had come barreling in, rather than catch her anxiety, I would have done my job as a chaplain. She was anxious, she was having a bad day, and I did not help her at all because I caught her anxiety rather than diffusing it. I would have known about myself by then that I'm prone to people-pleasing, that I'm prone to merge into someone else and do what they want rather than what is right. And so I would have defined myself. Rather than giving in to her, I would have said, now, ma'am, I'm not bringing that family into your ward. And if you just take a look at them, I think you would see they're not ready. Let's make a plan. What do you want to do? And she might have thanked me. She might have caught her breath and seen that they're in shock. She might have thanked me. She might have asked me to talk to her boss, who was putting pressure on her. She might have sworn at me, which happened. She might have told me where to shove my idea. Either way, she can be responsible for hers, and I can now be fully connected. I'm aware of my triggers. I'm managing them. I'm aware that God's with me. I'm not alone. And I can walk into that room of absolute chaos, unhinged, screeching, people grabbing me by the shoulders and shaking me, demanding to know how God could allow this to happen. All of these different things that people do when they're in shock and grief. And I could have been fully connected to myself, aware of God, aware of God's Holy Spirit, and helping this poor family get through the worst moment of their life. Well, that's just one story that not just that one encounter, but that whole year of chaplaincy profoundly changed my life. It changed my faith, the way I approach my faith. It changed my pastoring. I've been a pastor for 28 years. It shifted the way I pastor. And out of that, I learned some theory. I learned how to locate anxiety in any room I walk into. It was very helpful. And then I studied it in graduate school, and I've written a couple of books on it. And now that's what I spend most of my time. I attend a local church. Actually, I attend the church I used to be the lead pastor of. I'm now a congregant there. It's wonderful. And I spend most of my time traveling around, traveling the world and teaching people how do you notice and name and diffuse anxiety and reactivity first and always first in yourself and then in your people so that we can increase connection. That's what I do. And so I just want to teach you a couple of very simple tools just here in the next really like 7 or 8 minutes. We'll go pretty quick. And the first tool I want to teach you, because anyone can do this, is to learn how to walk into any space and notice the 4 spaces of anxiety. The 4 spaces of anxiety. This is our first tool. We'll really just do 2 tools. Anxiety exists and spreads in 4 spaces. The space inside me, the space between me and the other, the space inside the other, and the space between others. These are the 4 spaces of anxiety. And what anxiety and reactivity does is it takes all of the dynamics and it rolls it up into one big overwhelming tangle. And it's elusive, it's weird, it's a tangle, but it's also like vague, and we get overwhelmed, we don't even know what's going on. But actually, if you can pick a situation, so as you're watching this, you can do one of 2 things. You can look in the past and say, okay, let me think about an event in the past. Maybe it's a family situation, maybe it's a workplace situation, and you can start thinking through the 4 spaces. Where did I notice the anxiety? Who was generating it? Who was catching it? Was I catching it? Or if you really want to be brave, look at your calendar and say, what's coming up? What event is coming up in my life that I know triggers reactivity? Maybe it's a staff meeting. Maybe it's a one-on-one with a boss. Maybe it's getting a child out the door for school on time in the morning. You're like, okay, perfect. Then let that event be one where you're paying attention to the 4 spaces. What are the 4 spaces? The space in me. Well, I'm not going to teach that because I've talked plenty about that in my own story. Do you know your triggers? The best way to find your triggers is what puts you into shame, what puts you into anger, or what violates your core values. These are like the 3 ways of locating your triggers inside. What puts you into shame, where you just feel that awful feeling of, I'm no good, I'm an idiot, I can't believe it. What puts you into anger? Oftentimes anger is a sign of self-righteousness. And, it's hard to notice the Lord when you're really angry because God's no longer the judge. You are now the judge of the universe. Or your core values. This is another way to locate your triggers when someone violates something that's precious to you. Like in my life, courtesy is a core value of mine. So when I travel in airports and get off planes and stuff, if somebody jumps the line, I notice I'm triggered. So that's first space. Second space between me and the other. Space between me and the other. This is that shorthand reactivity. If you're married, or maybe you have a partner, or maybe you have a child, or maybe you were a child once, paying attention to that one-on-one dynamic with you and the other person and just how quickly things can spin up. Or sometimes you're both ramping up. Sometimes one of you is getting bigger, the other one is getting smaller. You're both trying to survive the encounter, but what you have in common is you're both disconnected. Paying attention to that. Third space inside the other. This is the space when you're in someone else's brain, you are thinking about what they are thinking about. And it might be like, oh no, what are they thinking? Like me, I'm a people pleaser, so I tend to worry about what other people think. When I was in high school, anytime I would try to talk to a pretty girl, man, I'd walk up to her. I'm going to say something funny. I'm going to make her laugh, right? Because like when you're in school, like making a girl laugh, that's the whole game. And I get close to her, I get overwhelmed, and then my brain would turn to circus music, and I couldn't make her laugh, and she walk away with her friends, and I'm now in her brain. Oh, what is she thinking? What is she thinking about me? How am I going to face the next day? Well, the other way you can go with third space is maybe you're not like, what were they thinking? Maybe you're more irritated. What were they thinking? It's the same phrase. It's just like you're frustrated at people. What they have in common, third space, you are trying to worry your way to change someone else. Maybe you have a relationship with an addict and you're trying to worry your way to their sobriety. Oh man, only God can change another person. You cannot change another person. You can pray for them. You can create an environment where they can change, but you can't change someone else. So third space is the one space that's futile. It's a waste of time. Fourth space is the space between others. That's the space. Sometimes you notice if somebody walks into the room and the mood of the room changes. Have you ever had that happen? The mood of the room changes. Like maybe everyone's having fun, but somebody is very sad and their sadness just kind of oozes into the room and everyone gets kind of quiet because the unspoken agreement is if Peter ain't happy, ain't nobody allowed to be happy, you know? Okay, so paying attention to the four spaces is such a simple tool where you can locate the anxiety, and what you're going to focus on most is space number one. It's fascinating how you can affect all the other spaces by primarily noticing yourself. This was really the life lesson for me as a chaplain. I thought that being a chaplain meant that I would really pay attention to people in the worst moment of their life. I was surprised to discover that first I had to notice myself, because I'm infecting every room I walk into and I'm being infected by all of the dynamics. So, for example, one of my fears is that I won't know what to say to make someone feel better when they're hurting. That's a fear of mine. And it took me a while to find that fear, to locate that fear, but put me in a room with a grieving person and my fear turns into a belief and it tells my brain, Steve, you have to say the right thing. You have to say something or do something to make someone feel better. Well, in chaplaincy, when somebody's dying or when someone has died, there's nothing to say. There's nothing to do. I have to restrain that fear so that I can be connected and present. Otherwise, I end up in a false reality. John says in 1 John 4:9, there is no fear in love. Perfect love drives out fear. Now, I would also say that fear doesn't drive out perfect love, it drives out awareness of perfect love. So when you're operating out of fear, out of a false need, you end up forgetting the Lord. So that first space, that's really your second primary tool, is first space. And then your final tool, just as we wrap up, the easiest thing to do is to notice and be curious. If you're going to get out your calendar and if you're going to look at an event, maybe getting a kid out the door for school in the morning, maybe a staff meeting, maybe a family situation, what I recommend you do is notice and use curiosity and don't change anything else. Like if you find your kid always dragging their feet in the morning, then maybe you're going to test this out tomorrow morning, the 4 spaces tomorrow morning, but you're not going to change anything. You're just going to notice. There's something incredibly powerful about noticing that decreases you catching and spreading anxiety. You just stay in your space, they stay in their space, and you're no longer as reactive especially when you use that second tool, curiosity. And be curious about what's going on inside me right now. What fear do I have? Oh, I know what's going on. If my child is late, my fear is that my reputation as a good parent is on the line. I'm a terrible parent. You see how our beliefs get connected to our behavior? And just approaching yourself with curiosity and kindness. You have to be kind to yourself. But also being curious, I wonder how my child is doing. I wonder what pressure and you might ask a couple of curious questions. And I wouldn't do it in the morning. I would wait to a debrief. What's it like in the morning, you might say, when we're all trying to hustle and what's that like for you? Just curiosity and noticing. So that's brief. That's the 4 spaces. That's the way our reactivity spreads and using noticing and curiosity. I hope that helps. I hope that one day we can be together in person. I would love that very much. Thank you very much, and God be with you.
Thank you for watching and visiting our YouTube channel today. If you liked what you saw, could you do something for us? Subscribe to our channel. It helps us reach and shape a generation with the message and cause of Christ. And don't forget to like this video, turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next.